you guys, it's Grace, and today I'm going to be doing a book review on Scythe by Neal Shusterman. I finished this book a couple days ago, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed this book, and I need to make a review on it so I can look back and look at this video before I read the second book in the series. So, the first part of this video will be spoiler free. It'll just be like a description of the book and my general thoughts on it, and then the second half of the video will be my actual in-depth, like, spoilery thoughts on it, which will help me when I'm looking to read the second book. Which there's still no release date on the second book, which makes sense because this book only came out the end of November, so it's been less than a month since this book came out, so it makes sense that there's not a plan for the next book quite yet. So anyway, this book I picked up on a whim. I really knew nothing about it, which I think is the best way to go into this book, but basically it's about a world where old age, like, you don't die of old age, there's no disease, there's really no way to die. If you're hit by a car and you die, you're just considered deadish, and then you're revived in a revival center. So there are people who even like jump off of buildings and go splat for fun, and then they go to a revival center, and it's just really interesting. So since there's no death, no natural death or anything like that exists in this world, scythes have to take the place of death, and they kill people. And some of them choose just regular, just like statistical ways to kill people. Some of them just look at a person and they're like, okay, that person needs to die. Some of them are just like, mass murder, let's kill everybody, homicide, woo! And that's how they reach their quota, because the scythes have to kill a certain amount of people each year to keep the population in check. So in this story, it's about two kids named Citra and Rowan, and they are Scythe's apprentices. So this one Scythe, named Scythe Faraday, decides to apprentice them, and usually a Scythe only takes on one apprentice, but this Scythe decides to take on two, and then the person who he sees the most fit to be an apprentice will become a Scythe. So that's pretty interesting. And in a twist of events, in a Scythe meeting, they decide that only one of them can survive, because that will ramp the other one up to be successful. Because neither of them really want to be a Scythe, so they figure, well, if the loser has to be killed, then that will make both of you try harder, and it will make it more likely that we get a really good Scythe. So the winner of the Scythehood, who becomes a Scythe, has to glean, which is basically their word for murder. That's what they call it when they kill people. It's gleaning. So the winner has to glean the loser. So it's just really interesting, and they have to figure out a way to not be gleaned or glean the other. So it's really interesting. It took me a while to get into it, and it was all really interesting, but to get like really into it, like invested, emotionally invested, it took me maybe like a quarter to a half of the book, but I did really enjoy that part. I just like wasn't seeking out the second book, but by the time I got to the end of the book, I was like waiting, just like, oh my gosh, I want the second book right now. So as a whole, I really enjoyed this book. The idea was very original, and I really enjoyed reading about something super unique. It wasn't like super normal about like a love triangle or even like a big romance or anything like that. Like, the characters are really quirky, and you just kind of start to love them. So I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and basically it just was a really fun read for me, and really quick read as well. It only took me about 3 days, and it's, let's see, it's about 430 pages. So it's a good length book, and it's really quick to read, so that's really nice. Alright, so that is my spoiler-free review. If you'd like to see the rest of the video, which has spoilers in it, like, make sure you've read the book first, so go read it if you haven't already, and then come back and watch this part of the video. But if you have read it, feel free to watch the rest of this, and we can discuss our thoughts on Scythe, the rest of the book. So, bye if you haven't seen this. or read this, I mean. Okay, so my thoughts on this book. It really surprised me. Well, I already basically knew the basis that I just talked about. Like, that's how much I knew before I started reading the book, in kind of. Like, I knew little bits and pieces of that. I did not know that the winner has to kill the loser, and that kind of surprised me when I read it. I had heard kind of stuff about that, but I didn't really know 100% sure, anything about that. So it's just kind of weird. I was really surprised. And then another thing I was surprised about was when Scythe Faraday died. I was like, what the heck? And then I thought, it would only make sense since they're going to two different teachers, then they would be considered two different apprentices, and then they wouldn't have to kill each other anymore. So it was really weird that they decided to still make them the winner glean the loser, because I was like, well, isn't that, that's no different than two different scythes taking on two different apprentices, so they're not even by the same person, they're not really competing anymore. So it didn't make sense to me why they were still competing, but I guess since the other scythes had that idea in their mind of oh, one of them's gonna die, they didn't want to take away that satisfaction and excitement from their life. So I guess I kind of understand that. Also, Rowan changed a lot throughout this book. Once he started being apprenticed by the creepy jeweled people, he really changed a lot. He still retained his general characteristics, but he matured very quickly. And he also, I was very conflicted about what was going to happen with him, because part of me thought, oh, he's gonna become a horrible person, and then him and Citra are going to have to, be enemies, and Citra is gonna be, fighting for good, and he's gonna be fighting for evil, and it's just gonna be a really, that's how the rest of the series is gonna go. That's how I was convinced it was gonna play out. But, he ended up remaining a humble, he still retained his morals and, still stayed basically the same person throughout the whole book. So I was impressed with him in the face of all that, horror and, peer pressure of them trying to create this mass killer. He still stayed Rowan. And the end of the book, it just blew my mind. I was speeding through the last 100 pages because I was just whoa, because we find out that Scythe Faraday is actually alive and he's just retired to try to save Citra and Rowan from having to kill each other and live this life as a scythe that neither of them really wanted. So that was a mind-blowing experience. And then Scythe's mentor, she's super awesome, Scythe Curie, or however you pronounce it. She's pretty awesome too. Just she has morals, she has standards, she's just a pretty great lady. And then the fact that Citra finds Scythe Faraday and people are chasing her for no reason, and she gets framed for his death, and all of this stuff, just whoa, I was just really confused. And then at the end, I kind of guessed the ending, that Citra would still save Rowan in some way, even though he didn't think she would. I kind of figured her out as a character. It wasn't too difficult for me to guess that she would still save him, and it also didn't surprise me that she was picked as the next Scythe. So that was that. But I thought it was really awesome that she planned it out with Scythe Faraday, and he came and picked up Rowan, and Rowan had a way to escape. It was really awesome. I was really happy. And then that one part, I forget what exactly the words were, but when he says, I love you, and then she says, same here, now get lost, I'm just that entirely shows Citra's personality, and how, she doesn't really need a guy in her life. She's just okay, yeah, I care about you, but I'm not one of those, gushy people that's gonna be oh my gosh, if I never see you ever again. She's not one of those people at all, and Rowan's not really either. They're both kind of just sarcastic, joking people, and I just really, really enjoyed reading about them and reading this book in general. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say in here. There's probably like some big thing that I wanted to talk about that I'm missing, but seeing how I never take notes, what can you do? So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please like it if you did. Comment below if you've read this book. If you're at this point in the video, I really, really am hoping you've read this book, but comment below what you thought of it. Also subscribe to my channel so you never miss another video. I'll see you next time. Bye!